And there it is, the sign that we are live. It is
Are we live?
Friday. We are live. It
We
is
even
Friday.
had a countdown.
We had a countdown. It is Friday, May 5th, 2023. This is the Helping Friendly Podcast, the 40 for 40 edition. And I have just one thing to say ahead of us getting into today's show, and that is, hello, Los Angeles. We are here. I'm
It
Brian,
worked.
Megan, RJ, who is laughing. Thank God. You know exactly what I was doing there. Thank you so much. And Jonathan, in a wonderful flannel shirt, in his amazing space where he records and does his podcasts. We're all here. It's Friday, and we have reached a critical juncture in fish history, 1996. Today we are talking about December 1st, 1996, from the Pauley Pavilion at the University of California, Los Angeles campus, otherwise known as UCLA. I don't know about you guys that love UCLA basketball, and that's the only reason I picked this show. No, I'm kidding. This is an awesome show. We're going to dive into it, talk about where we were all at in 1996. We're going to talk about pop music and pop culture, and then we're going to talk about fish. Before we do that, Jonathan, how you doing today, man?
I'm doing. Absolutely.
He's doing. RJ, how you doing today, man?
I'm fine, thanks. I just want to say to our listeners, thank you all for listening to this show. And this week I was going through some stuff, and I realized that we, as a company, hit 12 million downloads of Osiris podcasts, and
that's huge.
And
It's
HF Pod
amazing.
is a good amount of that. And so thank you everybody for listening to us for almost 10 years. Pretty crazy. So I'm excited about that. Also, I think if you do enjoy what we're doing, give us a review on Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen. If you can, give us the 5-star review and just tell people that you love us, because you probably do.
And if you have any
also
negative comments,
criticizing our punctuation and our pronunciation of words, just do that. Whatever.
Do that, definitely. But make sure you give us those 5 stars while you're at it.
Yes, absolutely.
Balance the scales, as it were.
I just want to make it clear that I'm not changing at all. You can't change me. You cannot change this. It's not going to
We don't want you to change, Brian.
Thank you. Thank you. Megan, how are you doing today?
I'm good. My best friend from college is in town today. And she's upstairs with her daughters. Yeah. Her daughter's like, can I listen to the podcast? I'm like, I don't know. I sometimes say things that I don't know if I want you to hear, but we'll see. Maybe they're
Plus,
listening.
I say
if they are, hi. Yeah, there you go. See, we've already done it.
Few of the references are going to go over your head unless you've listened to at least 150 fish shows. So there's kind of a bit of a high entry here at this point in time, but you're welcome to check in.
I figured she'd peter out. I mean, really, this is very boring for children. So
a little bit.
Is that a Goose reference?
Which part?
Nice joke, Jonathan.
So it's 1996. We have reached a critical point in fish history. My personal take on the band's history is that this is kind of where they divert from the original goals and the original path that they were on, that to my ears, to my brain, all peaks on December 31st, 1995. Some would say the best fish show of all time. Some would say one of the greatest fish shows of all time. Some would say the greatest or one of the greatest concerts of all time. I just say yes to all of that. That show provided the band with a bit of a crossroads of, what do we do now? Do we just keep chasing this perfection we've reached, or do we start to mess with what's working and see if there's something more? And 1996 is about that, messing with what has worked, see if there's something more. And as a result, the year has always been received either really, really well by some fans, really poorly by other fans, or middle of the road by a different group of fans, which I would also say is kind of the way it's going to go for the next 25 years throughout the band's history. Give or take a few. But it's a really interesting year. There's a lot to dig into. I was thinking a lot about this as I was listening to this show. I'm curious RJ, starting with you, you were a noob at this point in time. You had seen Phish a few times, but you were really starting to get into them. What are your thoughts on 1996, both in the moment, what you recall, as well as now?
Well, I just finished right before this recording the actual last episode of Undermine season 4, which was about 97, but it was actually about 98 because we had to go through the island tour, which is apparently part of 97, even though that's not how it worked in terms of
Like the
calendars. But
epilogue.
yeah.
Yeah.
So I don't know. 96 to me still is like, even listening to the show, sorry, Megan, I was sort of like, fine. It's fine.
I like that you're
fine.
apologizing to me about this. Okay, keep going.
I just didn't want to. I just feel bad. But no, I think there's a case to be made that this is a transitional year. That's the case that most people make. I think after Halloween, it does shift right to like Halloween '96 to me is the point where like this year becomes something different. So you start to hear different things toward the end of the year, based on I think the Remain in Light and you know who knows what else. But I don't know, this year is like not something I go back to very much. And I don't know. I don't know now after listening to like every 97 show and talking about 97 and now the island tour, it's hard to really like meet. I think starting at Halloween 96, it started to go up until Big Cypress.
All that 97 stuff, it's hard to like start listening to good music again, right?
Yeah, I know. So bad.
No, I just kidding there.
Unbelievable.
But the I mean, with 96, it is a weird year. Like
Mhm.
Yeah.
there was, of course, time off when they were recording, and then the Joyous Lake show happened, and we got the tapes, and it was like very exciting because there was newish stuff there. And then I don't know. I think we can all agree Clifford Ball is pretty great, and I'm sure there's highlights throughout the summer tour that we could get into if this was an episode on the summer tour. And I think a lot of people will agree with what you just said, RJ, is that 96 and Brian as well. 96 is it's not bad. It's like they were a top of their game kind of band coming into this year, and then they were just like trying to figure out how to apply that without doing the same thing that they had just done. And so, we'll hear it in the show, and I'll talk about it specifically as we go through this show. But they're, I think they did find a little, a new match to relight the fire or light another set of some shit analogous. I don't know. I'll make up more things to say about it, but they found something new and exciting when they did Halloween, and that definitely gave them a new head of steam or whatever. And we hear some of that here in this show that we're going to get to eventually.
Yeah, I all of what you guys have said, I see truth in. I will just note here before we shift to Megan, who is the defender of 1996, and we have to give her like Megan's total corner here.
I don't know if I want that.
See the other side
title.
of 1996. Well, I'll just say my second appearance ever on the Helping Friendly podcast was in the fall of 2015, and my appearance was to talk about fall 1996 highlights, and it was something I volunteered for because at some point in 2015 the Relisten app came to my attention. I think at that point it was called the Phish.in app or whatever it was, and I could suddenly listen to every single Phish show, and I started just going like random shows, and I started going with shows I'd never listened to, and I started listening to full tours. And one of the things that really hit me at that moment was how underrated fall 1996 is, specifically November. And you touched on it, RJ, you touched on it, Jonathan. Something seems to happen after Halloween when the band taps into a sound that's been bouncing around their heads, and they've been trying to figure out like a more democratic approach. And Trey has been trying to figure out ways to step back in the shadows. And you start to hear throughout fall 1996, the latter part, a lot of musical kind of doors opening towards what would become the music they tap into with so much more ease in 1997. And so for me, listening to this, you hear halfway this band in 1995 that's still big booming arena rock, and halfway this very rhythmic proto funk kind of mercurial band that is figuring out ways to communicate outside of just big solos and big peaks. And that
Mhm.
leads to some really, really good moments. It also leads to some confusion. And as you said, Jonathan, trying to figure out new ways to do old things, something like that, trying to figure out like, how do we get to the same place of band audience connection through a different musical path? So there's a lot of interest in that. But Megan, I think you saw the most shows you've ever seen in 1996. You traveled overseas to see the band in 1996. You got a ton of experience seeing Phish during this year. What are your thoughts on 1996 overall?
Yeah, I saw 17 shows this year. So this is the year I saw the most Phish I've ever seen in my whole life. And clearly, I have a lot of attendance bias about this year. But I think this year's really fascinating because it is this post peak year, right? They have this like triumphant peak of everything they've kind of ever wanted. And when I was researching for this episode, I found this quote from Steve Lillywhite, and when he was working with them on Billy Breathes. And I was going to read the whole quote, but I think I'm just going to center in on this one part when he says, "This band can play anything," which then raises the question, well, what should they play? And I feel
Mm.
like that's kind of perfectly encapsulates like where they were. They had kind of accomplished everything they wanted to accomplish and they could play anything. Well, then what do? Right? Like you have to decide where you go then. And they take 6 months off, except for these two little shows that they play. Not little, but Jazz Fest and another one in Bearsville or in Woodstock. And then they're recording. And you just watch this band have to rediscover themselves in a way that I think is so unique to them because they had just climbed such a huge mountain and they'd done it themselves their own way. And then it's like, where do you go? They're not a band that has people telling them what to do. So they had to discover that themselves. And it's just amazing to me to kind of reflect back on the time that I spent in Europe watching them play these shows where they were just having fun and hanging out with fans and doing that, probably knowing it was the last time they were ever going to be able to do that. And that experience it just felt so intimate. And I think that watching them then go through the fall tour, and I saw 4 shows on that fall tour, all of them, I saw some California shows and then Vegas. And the momentum that they pick up after Halloween is incredible. And watching the energy and the emotion that they were playing with then was so different from in Europe. And it's incredible to watch that. And you can see that they were really ignited by this Remain in Light and by this idea of, instead of adding on to each other improvisationally, they could find a groove together. And I think that was really amazing. And you hear that in moments, and just, it's so cool to listen. I love listening back to the show because you can really hear it in moments how they're working through that, but also still finding those spots that sound like 95, and finding those spots that have the precision of like 93, but then also starting to move towards that groove of 97. It's just, to me, it's really fascinating. Like, it's easy to look back and talk about 95. It's easy to look back at 97 and talk about it. This is harder to talk about, and it's inspiring to me. I like it.
Megan, can I just jump in and just on the sound? Because I think there's something that happens in just ever since we did the Alive Again podcast with Trey. I think I've thought a lot about how going back to like what he was inspired by, like King Sunny Ade and Sun Ra, and like I think like the use of the mini kit in 95 and 96. I think he was like kind of searching for this like polyrhythmic sound in Phish that like never really
Totally.
landed. Like, and I mean, there are great jams from like fall 95 with him on the mini kit and stuff, but I think like Remain in Light like brought it all together for the first time, where it was like, I feel like that was what kind of like solidified this sound. And then I feel like that was like an accomplishment, and then after that they kind of just like went off in a different direction. I feel like the use of like the mini kit was like working toward trying to get that sound, and then they like got it with Remain in Light. And then like that 11/2/96 Cross-Eyed, they like perfected it, and then they were like, all right, now we're gonna like take what we learned and move to a totally different sound. I don't know, it's interesting. And that was also around the time when he started like playing with other people up in Burlington and led to the formation of Tab and eventually. But I feel like they were like looking for something and then hit it with Remain in Light, and then kind of like took what they learned and then moved on from there.
And that's so hard to do. You know,
Right.
like, I mean, that's really hard to do.
Yeah, I feel like that the idea that they found something on Halloween and then they started implementing aspects of it in their shows, but couldn't on the fly get to where we hear them get by February 1997, when shows become like, you think about that Amsterdam 97 show and how that whole second set just like flows together, and it's so swampy and it's dark, and the jamming sounds completely different from earlier, like from 4 months earlier. I think that they needed the break at the end of 1996 to intentionally shift, because I think it would have had to have been really hard to come off of Remain in Light, know what really works, be adapting to arenas. Like, one of the things that defines
Yeah.
this tour is that they're playing arenas consistently for the first time. They play a ton of NBA size arenas on this tour. That is a totally different vibe for them compared to where they were even a year prior, when they were playing a lot of theaters still and a lot of like
Mhm.
auditoriums. So there's just so much change happening that I've got to imagine at that period they're both incredibly excited and inspired by what they've discovered, while also being like, we can't throw everything into this because we have no idea if it's going to work.
Well, yeah, and Trey even says that there's like a quote from him that I wrote down. He said it was like an era was coming to an end. We realized that we had to downsize, despite the fact that we were growing in terms of the number of people who were coming to see the band. We'd spread ourselves too thin, so we started cutting back. You know, it's that idea of like growth, 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 and then you kind of get there, and then you realize, like, is this too big? Or do we want to be here? You know, where can the music go? Like, they were going through a lot this year.
It's like numbers that'll make you lose faith in capitalism. You know what I'm talking about? Jonathan, what are your thoughts on all this?
I don't know, man. In 1996, I was like changing diapers. So none of this, I'm pretty sure this year isn't very real. I don't think Fish actually toured. They could have not toured and just like put out music regularly, and I would have.
Well, they didn't
believed it.
tour half the year, so you're
Yeah,
right
they
about
didn't tour
that.
half the year. Surrender the Year came out this year, also in April of this year. And how rad was that? Can we just talk about that? No, we shouldn't. We should dwell on this. I mean, I think I don't have a lot of further thoughts on 96 beyond what I said earlier. I think that it's just it's a growing and transition year. It definitely misses a lot of people. I think a lot of people miss the point of what's happening here also.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, it misses them. They miss it. There's definitely good stuff going on. And if you're an engaged listener, I think you'll find something.
That point that you just made of this year misses some listeners miss it. I feel like this is the first year in Fish history where that happens.
Yeah.
And this is all
Yeah,
coming
that
from
makes
like
sense.
hindsight, but like the perception I get is that everyone was jumping on board, and maybe aspects of 94 because people were dismayed a bit by some of the songs on Hoist, or section of the fan base was. But
I mean, that
this
happened
seems-
every album. That was not new.
Yeah,
or
so true.
but like this seems
particularly
like the first
unusual.
year where it was kind of like, what's this band doing? Is this still the same band that I fell in love with, which will repeat itself every couple of years up until even today?
I know more people who dropped off in 97 than they did in 96, though.
We will touch on that as well next week.
Yeah.
That's an interesting point. Meg, have we gotten to your corner? I feel like we need to get your perspective on where Fish was at this point in time. I know you shared a bit.
Yeah, let's do it. I'll go through a little bit of it. They played 71 shows this year, so a lighter year from them. On Pollstar's chart of top grossing acts, though, they were 18th, even in a light year. And the ticket prices were lower than the acts ahead of them. So they were starting to kind of like break into that top echelon of bands that were making a lot of money. You know, like we said, they took the 6 months off. They're going to go in February and start recording Billy Breathes at the barn, not Trey's barn, but in Bearsville. And they're going to start by working with John Sickett and experimenting with the idea of a blob, where they play one note and then they play on top of it. These parts of this music is going to become swept away and steep. Then they're going to take a break. Trey's going to record Surrender to the Air, which is the first side project that doesn't involve all of them. And then they're going to do a show in April in Jazz Fest, which they won't be invited back to because they brought so many crazy wooks. But that is really like indicative.
Wasn't me,
of
man. I was
I
home
wasn't there
waiting
either.
on
I
the
have
baby.
to I have to admit, it wasn't me either. But I think that's really like, this is the first time that the Grateful Dead hasn't existed this year, right? So that obviously impacted the scene so much and impacted venues they were able to play at moving forward, like we're going to see happen after Red Rocks later this year. Then they went back to the studio. They brought in Steve Lillywhite, and I just think it's really interesting. I was reading about Trey's thoughts about Billy Breathes, and he was saying he felt like the album was what you make when you have nothing left to prove. And I think that really speaks to like there's like a quiet confidence and like a calm beauty to Billy Breathes that is, I think, like nothing else they've made. And it's my second favorite studio album. And I think Rift beats it out only because of nostalgia. But I love Billy Breathes. I think it's a masterpiece. And it entered the Billboard chart at number 7, which is the highest of any Phish album ever, which is pretty cool.
Even with that album cover.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Saying a lot. Saying a lot. Even as hard as they tried to make it not go anywhere with Mike's face on it. Yeah. For the rest of the year, they're going to play an unannounced show in June in Woodstock. And then in July, like we've mentioned, they're going to tour Europe. So they do 18 shows out there, 12 with Santana opening for them and 6 headlining shows. And then in August, they finally play in the US for the first time. They're going to play in Utah and 4 Red Rock shows, which I think are underrated. Maybe it's because it was my first time at Red Rocks, my only time I've ever been to Red Rocks, actually. And it was just a magical 4 days. But, you know, they've got the like mini acoustic set. There's a lot that goes on at Red Rocks. And they're going to play Alpine Valley, 2 incredible shows at Deer Creek. This is when Deer Creek is going to become like the Phish Mecca. I think this is kind of when they put their stamp on it. And then end the year at Clifford Ball, which is pretty crazy. I'm not the year, sorry, the summer. But Clifford Ball, like, that's huge, you know, the influence that had. We all know influenced not only Phish, but like Bonnaroo, Coachella probably wouldn't exist without Clifford Ball. So, and then we have the fall tour. So they're going to start in the Northeast, wind down the coast through the Midwest and along the West Coast and end in Vegas. And yeah, I mean, I think that the show we're going to talk about today is perfectly placed because it's just kind of captures that energy that I was talking about before that they have. And then, yeah, they're going to end 2 nights in Philly and 2 nights in Boston for their New Year's Eve run, which is going to be the last time they kind of don't play MSG for a long time.
Yeah, we get that mid-tour MSG, not the end of the year. It's kind of that last time that MSG is just kind of like, I guess 2009, you had that strange early December run, but like aside from that, it's like the last time that MSG is kind of not seen as a capstone moment on the overall year. Big shout out to Hershey 96, 814, one of the classic Night Before the Night shows. I encourage anyone out there who has not listened to that. That is one of my favorite shows from this year and was number 2 for me when I was deciding this.
Ooh.
Brian, sorry to interrupt you. Because I'm only here for a certain amount of time on this particular episode. Can I just say something about this first set real quick? Unless you are not ready to go.
Jump.
No, you can say this and then we'll jump.
Linear time does not exist.
So I found this first set to be hard to get into as it started, but I think the character zero, as you know, at this point we hear character zero as a closer or encore, and it's like, okay, yeah, it's like character zero, you know. This, I feel like this was really exciting. Like it debuted in this year, 96, played 19 times in 6 months, which is a lot. But you know, I like the song live. I think most people do. It's like, you know, one of those songs that's great live, and then you listen to it back and you're like, okay, this is the same. But I was thinking about it today. I think Trey is so good at knowing like what kinds of songs they needed at the moment. Like there was, even now, like, you know, Sea of Stars or About to Run or Ruby Waves. They're like just like the kinds of songs that are kind of like missing or that help complement what they have. This is like their own kind of like Loving Cup or just a more straightforward guitar driven rock song than like Cavern or Chalk Dust or some of the other rockers that had been happening up to this point. And it's just like, it was just a really smart song to throw into the mix at this point in time. Like a really, you know, straightforward rock song that really gets people hyped up and allows Trey to shred, and, you know, nonsensical lyrics for the most part. But, you know, just like, it just made me think like this was a really smart thing to do with these lyrics and turn it into a song that really like gets the call and response and gets the crowd into it at a time when there weren't that many of those songs that existed at that point.
Yeah, not in
It's a
the
really
Fish
good point.
catalog. Although they
Mhm.
Yeah.
played it so much, I know a lot of people who were just burnt on it for a while after
Yeah.
this couple of years stretch that started in 96.
Yeah, 96, 97, you get it very, very
Cool.
often, but it
But it
is
does rip.
it rips. It's such an interesting song in their history because a year from now you're going to get this random 21-minute version of it, and then as we move
That didn't happen.
towards as
You
we
made that
move
up, Jack.
towards the end of 3.0, we'll get some jam versions off of it. But it's kind of one of those, to your point, RJ, this is like, and I didn't look into this, but it just based on what I know of this band, this is one of the few times this is not a set closing or encore slot for this song. It is usually it is usually capping off a set, capping off a show, and here to have it in the middle of the show kind of throws you off as we get into it. As friend of the pod, Mr. Neil Landry says, it's Know My Soul, but it rips. And
Yes.
let's just not compare the two. How about that? All right. Because My Soul is one of the greatest songs ever, as it kicked off one of the best sets in Fish history just a few weeks back.
Oh my God. I'm out of here.
And on that,
Literally
so-
second packing. Oh,
So-
Lord.
really quickly, before we dive into the show here, we do have to do Pop Culture Corner to see where
We
we were in the
have to.
world at this point in time. We are like weeks past Bill Clinton resoundingly winning his second presidential term, beating Mr. I'm Bob Dole. Bob Dole lost the election fair and square. Thank you, Bob Dole, for respecting democracy. We really, really appreciate that. So quick rundown here. TV. We've got a unifying theme of what was popular at this point in time. Number 1, ER. Number 2, Seinfeld. Number 3, Suddenly Susan. Number 4, Friends. And number 5, The Naked Truth. Jonathan, Megan, trivia time. Can you tell me what all 5 of those shows have in common?
Television.
No.
They were all on television, which
You
was
know we're like the worst
medium
at trivia.
where they sent stuff out into the
All
air,
on television
into your
in
box.
1996, but they were all from NBC. This is the peak of must-see TV. Neil says, I never watched them. Aside from Seinfeld,
Yeah,
that's
you're not
okay.
missing much.
That's okay.
Seinfeld for
Came to
sure.
play, Kevin Power. You guys both were right. Thank you so much. You guys will win. I don't know, something. A high five at the next show we
Shout-outs.
see. That's what we can give out. Shout outs. Music. I need a little bit of help with this, guys. All right, I'm going to count down from 5 because number 1 fucking rips, but there's a few I have
Oh
no
my God,
idea
I'm
about. Here.
excited.
Number 5 is Keith Sweat featuring Athena Cage. Nobody. You guys familiar with this?
No, I don't know what that is.
Me either. Number 4, Merle Bainbridge, Mouth. You guys familiar with that?
No.
No idea.
Made
You
that
guys
up.
are going to know the next 3, all right? We got 2 divas and one of the greatest R&B hits of all time. Number 3 is Celine Dion with It's All Coming Back to Me Now. It's all coming back to me now. Amazing, amazing song.
That was a
Before she
beautiful
wrote,
Celine Dion.
just incredible impression of
Yeah.
Celine Dion. That was me impersonating her husband singing Celine Dion, her like 95-year-old husband. That is like a year before she is going to completely own the world with My Heart Will Go On. We haven't reached
Yeah,
that point yet. But we're
Titanic
getting there.
moment. Mhm.
Number 2, this was a big diva song. Tony Braxton, Unbreak My Heart. Come on, you guys have to
Yeah,
know
yeah,
this.
yeah. That's good.
Ugh.
Yeah. I'm not gonna.
I
Say
mean,
it.
I'm not asking you to like it, Jonathan. I'm just asking you to know it, okay?
I'm aware
um,
that it existed.
And number 1, Megan, I know that you like this song. I know that you love this song.
Really?
I know
I'm
this.
excited.
It's Blackstreet featuring Dr. Dre, No Diggity. This is like
Oh,
one of the
oh, I
defining
love
R&B
this
hits
song.
of the mid 90s. This is a song that like I was 11 at this point in time, and I remember seeing music videos for songs like this and knowing that like I shouldn't be watching these, but also like I couldn't look away.
Yeah, I think I have a video I posted recently of me dancing in a bathroom to this song. I love this
It-
song.
it's like
still
the best.
rips.
It comes on in a
It's-
bar and you just have to dance.
and you're like, yes, yeah.
It's a banger. All right, and then movies really quick. We got some good stuff here and we got some total dog shit. No pun intended. Number 5, John Travolta as Michael. Remember this? He was like an angel that smoked cigarettes and hung out and like said dirty words.
Oh my God.
been
Yeah.
trying
That
not
was
to.
so weird. Yeah.
Number
I
4.
never saw it.
I don't think I
think
saw
it-
it either.
I'm
me
pretty
doing
sure
my
you like
part.
the next two, Jonathan. Number 4 is Star Trek First Contact.
Never
Yes.
saw it.
I saw it when
It was
came out.
good. It was a good follow up to Generations. It was solid. Number 3, Beavis and Butthead Do America. This was a formative movie for 11-year-old Brian. We watched this at many sleepovers during the summer of
Sleepovers.
1996. Number 2, one line gives it all away. Just show me the money.
I've never seen that
Those are
movie.
his- You seriously? It's a good movie.
Yeah,
Oh, it's a good
seriously.
movie.
It's a solid
Classic
movie.
movie.
It's no matter what, you'll fall in love with Tom Cruise by the end of it. Like you just will. You can't help it.
He's very charming in it.
Incredibly. And number 1, I said that there was no pun intended. 101 Dalmatians, the live action remake starring Jeff
What?
Daniels. Yeah.
This is such trash. I'm going to tell you the best movie I saw in 1996. It
Do
was
it.
the only movie I saw in 1996,
Do
aside
it.
from the Star Trek movie,
Do it.
because they don't count because they're given. It was Twister. Which I
Awesome
went and
movie.
saw right after my daughter was born. She was
know
in
if
the
I saw that.
hospital for minor, but kind of, ongoing medical things for a few weeks after she was born. And we were there. We were in the hospital so long, overnight, all this stuff. One day, I don't know if it was my parents or the other parents came in and said, "Look, you guys have to get the fuck out of here. Go away for a few hours." And so we went, and we went like a block away and saw
Yeah.
Twister. And Bill motherfucking Paxton, he was the
Ooh.
man.
Bill Paxton
that
fucking
guy.
rules. Helen
He's
Hunt.
so
Philip
good.
Seymour Hoffman is in this
Philip
movie
Seymour
as
That's
like a
like
young Philip
star-studded.
Seymour Hoffman. It is
Man,
an
it's great.
unbelievable
He was
movie.
no
I watched
stars.
this.
Great movie.
I don't think
No,
I've
he
ever
was
seen
nothing.
it.
I think it might have been his first movie. No, it wasn't his first because he was in
Yeah.
but anyway, he was young. Cameron Roy was in this as well.
Gary
who
Ellis.
also was Gary Ellis.
Ooh.
Thank you.
I'm adding. This has been my favorite thing about 40 for 40. Not really, but one of them is that I'm getting to watch all these old movies. Like I watched Terminator thanks to your recommendation. It was so good.
So
All
good.
right.
I rewatched Twister like a year ago and it fucking
Really?
holds up. It's actually
Okay,
it's
I'm
an
gonna watch
amazing
it.
Oh,
movie.
yeah. I
There's
watched
no
it.
reason to drive a van into a tornado, but I'm here for it.
I watched it a couple years ago. I was doing a podcast on Bill Paxton. And so I watched so many of his movies, which
Oh,
was
he's
a
so good.
blast. And
Mhm.
Big
rewatched
time
that. and it was a
R.I.P.
good
He was
time.
so good. I just watched Edge of Tomorrow, which was the latest movie I saw that I was aware he was in, and he was quite good in that.
I have something I want to share with everybody before we get too far. So
Please.
there's been this little thing going on a social media that I've been amused by, and it's people making up songs and other stories using the chat GPT and whatnot. And I was like, well, HF Pod really needs to get on the AI bandwagon. And so, the next few episodes, everybody, just to let you know, we're going to be entirely AI generated. We're going to be working on the scripts with the bot here soon. But in the meantime, I just have a little, chat AI thing to
My God, I'm so
discuss
scared.
Oh,
Fish
that's fun.
1996. Is it though? So here is the latest iteration of tell me about Fish in 1996, but don't mention drug use because it kept wanting to go down these weird corridors about drugs. And I was
Oh,
like, I can't
really?
even read that. It's just not right. So in 1996, Fish was a highly acclaimed American rock band that had been gaining popularity for nearly a decade. Despite their reputation for incredible live performances and improvisation, 1996 is often regarded as one of the band's weakest years. Throughout the year, Fish faced a number of challenges that impacted the quality of their music and shows. The band was experimenting with different sounds, and some fans were critical of their shift towards more electronic and techno-inspired music. Technical issues also plagued many of the performances, causing frustration for both the band and their fans. Additionally, the band was dealing with a number of personal and professional issues that further contributed to the difficulties of the year. You hear that? Got a little euphemism there for the things I told it not to say. Despite these challenges, Fish remained committed to their music and continued to tour, ultimately persevering and regaining their footing in the following years. So, lesson to everybody. AI is garbage. Form your own opinions. Although it was pretty spot on for a couple of those lines.
That was really
I-
good.
I
That
thought
was
it
that was
not
actually
entirely wrong, you know? Yeah.
was-
except for where it was.
Yeah.
Jordan Sheldon asked if you would write it in the voice of young Ryan. So
Hilarious.
good stuff. That's good stuff.
That's the next thing.
All right, that was great. Let's dive.
Next week we'll get young
next
Ryan
week
on
we will do that.
1997 via ChatGPT.
One other thing I just need to mention about this date is 12/1/1996. On this date, Wayne Gretzky became the first and only NHL player to get 3,000 points in his career. The great one
Wow.
on 12/1/1996. On the other side of the country was doing it. All right.
Speaking of this date, 12/1 is a pretty good date for Fish in general.
Quite.
In
Mhm.
fact, I would
Yeah.
argue this might be the lower of many great shows. In fact, they played 3 years in a row on 12/1. And of those 3, this might be the lesser, but it's still pretty good.
Still
12/1/94, awesome. 12/1/95, Rules Your Face, and this one's pretty good.
I'm trying to think of others beyond this. 12/1/87, they sang the national anthem in Philly.
That doesn't really count.
No, that doesn't work. 12/1/03, they've got Jeff Holdsworth coming out in Albany. Pretty good show.
Okay,
overall,
that
really
might be
good.
the lower.
Yeah.
That's got a great Thunderhead, a great Stash, a great Wolfman's, awesome Tweezer 2001, You Enjoy Myself. There's some more. It's no 12/30, but 12/1 is a very good show, or a very good date. I would argue, and I think you probably would agree with this, Jonathan, that the 95 version is that is my peak.
Yeah,
love that
and
show
not
so
just
much.
based on attendance bias, although I was there.
Based on that perfect solo that Trey plays in Down the Seas, where you're like, how did you do this live? How?
The fact that he skipped hydrogen and I wasn't mad.
Yeah, there you go.
It just
That's
went
all the
straight
proof
for
you
the
need.
punk.
That's it.
All right, so we are going to dive into 40 minutes into this podcast. We're going to dive into the show here. 12/1/1996. You know what would be funny is if we just kept this conversation going until RJ got back, and then we were
Yeah,
like,
that
"All
would
right,
be-
now we should talk about this show."
We've been waiting for you, RJ.
Oh, let's get into set one.
Yeah,
So
let's
this
do
is-
it. I'm
This is
excited.
Pauley Pavilion, UCLA's campus. So I picked this show. We rotate. We all pick shows. I picked this show for two very specific reasons. The other shows I was considering, as I noted, was 8/14/96 from Hershey, Pennsylvania. Didn't feel like it really exemplified where Fish was at. It's just, to me, it's a really special show. I also thought about 11/16/1996 from Omaha. Megan ruined that choice because she picked a Nebraska show last week, and as rule here in Osiris Land, we can't celebrate Nebraska 2 weeks in a row.
Nope.
That's
I don't
not a
write these
rule.
rules.
You picked
I
this
don't write
because
these
of
rules.
11/17/73, right?
That is the other reason I picked this show, is because
Okay, good,
11/17/73 is one of my favorite second sets that the Dead ever played.
So good.
It's like it's a mirror set. It's so beautiful how it works. No, I picked the show because I remember when this show was first recommended to me. I was flying cross country, and I posted onto a message board that will go unnamed and said, I need a Fish show to listen to on my flight. And someone said 12/1/96. And I looked up the set list and I was like, that looks like a lot of songs. And I just don't really know if I don't know if I want to listen to a show like that. I want something a little bit more jamming. And this person was like, shut up, just download the show, listen to it, and then tell me how you feel. And I was like, okay, all right, I can handle that.
It's a
I
lot of
listened-
songs, but it's kind of short.
It's a lot of songs, but it's kind of short, and it just fucking rages all the way through. And one of the things that this show does is it gives you a lot of song placements in areas that you wouldn't necessarily expect those songs to be placed, which throws off your emotions, throws off your expectations, and instead just has you surprises at every corner. And there's 3 very specific points that we'll talk about here. Actually 4, now that I'm looking at the set list, where you're like, that song doesn't belong there, but holy shit, it's there and it works perfectly. So set 1, Peaches and Regalia into Poor Heart into Cavern into Cars, Trucks, Buses, Character 0, The Curtain into Down with Z's, Train Song, Horse Silent, Sample in a Jar, and Run Like an Antelope. I know what I think about this set, but I want to know what you guys all think about this set. Jonathan, let's start with you. What are your thoughts about it?
All right. Well, as the resident contrarian, I think this set is okay. I have a couple thoughts. Love the Peaches to open. It was kind of a kick down, first in a couple years. Um, Cavern early in the set. It made me think that last week, was it? Maybe 2 weeks, sometime very recently, somebody noted that Cavern should be somebody in the chat, I should say, noted that Cavern should be, an opener. And they didn't quite
Yep.
open with it, but it really kind of kicks off the rest of the set. I love cars, trucks, buses, full stop. But also I love it after Cavern right there. It just it just feels very natural as a follow-up. The Disease is good, maybe too compact, but it doesn't fall apart or anything. It's good, and then I honestly the rest of the set just kind of like by for me. It just kind of flies by and doesn't really didn't hold me. I definitely listened to it twice. Didn't hold me.
Meg, what are your thoughts?
Well, so I was at this show, and when you picked it, I was like, what are my memories of that show? And I have very few, which is very weird for me because like I can tell you so many moments of the European tour. I can tell you so many moments of like fall 95. And so I
So it
actually
was a
called up.
really good time, right?
Yeah, exactly. I actually called up a friend of mine who I went to college with and I was on this tour with, and I was asking him like, it's so weird. I don't remember much about this. And he was like, well, it was almost 30 years ago.
Mhm.
That's fair. But we drove up from Tucson and we drove all the way up to San Francisco, and we have no memory of where we stayed. But it was Thanksgiving weekend. And so we had Thanksgiving dinner in a hotel in San Francisco and raised hell there and gave everyone a lot of trouble. I think we were having a lot of fun. And I have really strong memories of like that dinner, and being at a holiday dinner with friends and not my family felt very kind of like adult and different. And I remember that. And then we saw the Daly City show, we saw this show, and then we saw what was after that? Um, Whatever the next show was. I don't remember now. But we saw those 3 shows. And then I went all the way back to Tucson, and then I came all the way back for Vegas 4 days later. So I was doing a lot of traveling at this point, but yeah, I don't remember a lot about it, which means I either had a great time or I didn't appreciate the tweezer in the second set. I'm not really sure, but either way, it just makes me realize like how much about seeing shows back then is so different from how I see shows now. But
Too
this
much
set,
acid in the stuffing, maybe.
yeah,
Mhm.
probably.
Mhm.
Probably a lot of those things. Peach's opener, yes, like this is just so great. This is like a Buried Alive opener to me. I've been chasing this song. I haven't seen this song in so long, and I've been since 1996, and I've been chasing it forever. And I love this as an opener. And they were doing that. They were like busting out songs. Like they played a Sparks in Daly City that they hadn't played in a really long time. I think they were kind of trying to think about what else they could play in different spots. Like you said, Jonathan, the Cars, Trucks, Buses, super confident when they're playing it now, which is like if you listen to it from 95 when they debuted it in the fall, it just sounds so much like slower. And this is like a really like, it has like some energy to it in a way that's really, really great. And yeah, I think that Chalk Dust after is like rip roaring. And like Trey gives a shout out to Zappa and like says that the hometown boy and that they played, he tells what Peaches is. And I think the Down with Disease has like a really nice jam with a solid peak. I love Train Song. It's like my favorite Mike song. And Horse Silent is, I think, some of the most beautiful music that Phish has ever written. And I think that when they play it here, like the tension in Silent is so incredible. And I think that they're really good at, even though this set, like you said, Brian, it does have like a lot of things in weird places. It does seem to flow okay for me. Like nothing was jarring at all. And I love that they're really able at this point to like slow down in a really like intentional
Yeah.
way. And the Horse Silent is just, that group of music is just, it always just stops me in my tracks. And I loved it here as well. And the Antelope is really great. It's dark, it goes off the rails, it's really chaotic. It has this like repeated ascending riff, and it peaks really nicely into the solo and super energetic. So I thought the set was good. It's like classic 96 Phish, like when I was seeing Phish in 96, I was seeing a lot of the same songs and I didn't care.
Yeah, I would agree on the set flow, even though I did just kind of say, well, it didn't really do a lot for me. It also didn't like hit me in the face and make me go, what? Why are they playing
Yeah,
that? It
I
just kind
know.
Yeah.
of,
It's got a good flow. The whole show
it's
does.
like easy listening fish. No, I'm kidding.
It's
No,
classic.
the part of the reason I picked it is because this is a kind of show as we're going to get into in the second set, I would advocate for this show to get an official release because I think, like a lot of
Yes.
96 shows, it would benefit from the soundboard quality.
Yes,
Yeah,
a
especially this
different
tweezer.
It's
kind
very
of
boomy.
Insane.
It's
take on
very
the
boomy.
mix would be helpful.
Yeah, and I've got to imagine. Well, I don't want to step out on toes here, but like I've got to imagine for the fish tapers who were transitioning to arenas, there was a learning curve the same way that there
Yeah.
was audio wise for the band.
I
And the
mean, a lot
band
of those
talks about
guys, not all of them, but a lot of those guys had spent some time doing dead taping
that's
as
fair.
well.
Oh
That's
yeah.
fair.
So it's not like big rooms were new. Some rooms and some tapes, went just fine. Some
Mhm,
rooms,
mhm.
not so much. I mean,
Yeah.
Mhm.
again, to the local regional tapers, 93, Jerry Band played this space. So it's not like it was a complete unknown, but
Mhm.
maybe this space just sounds like that at that time.
That's true. There are some
Especially
arenas that
for
just don't
section
totally
tapes.
work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like maybe
That's
if we
totally.
had some good front of boards, somebody up front with the Sheps, y'all feel free to shake those sources loose and drop them on my hard drives. That'd be great. But also, yes, soundboards might change a little bit of our perspective
Yeah.
on some of these jams.
Yeah. And that's, for me, this show though, the thing that attracts me to it is one of my favorite things about Fish is when I hear a set where on paper, there's always that discussion of what does it look like on paper versus what does it sound like in your ears. On paper, it does not look like it works to me. And then when I
Mhm.
listen to it, it all works perfectly. And I love that dichotomy with this band sometimes where because of the energy, because of the excitement, because of the way that they're delivering these songs, it all works. Even if you wrote it out and you're like, that just, we're going here and then over here and what's happening. And to me, you get this whole segment basically from Peaches through Disease that is just it's relentless. And there's
Mhm.
you know there's fades into the next song, which only builds the energy. And it's not until you get to Train Song, which is like 45-50 minutes into the set, where they finally like take a breath and say, hey, we're here. Oh my god, it's great to be in Los Angeles tonight. I love, like, Poor Heart is not a song I return to often. You get these hoots and hollers from Fishman where you just know right away they're into it. Cavern, brilliant placement. Character Zero, similar to Cavern, very, very weird placement here, but it just works perfectly. The album kind of cool down end to it, which was really nice. Like, it
Mm.
has that Billy Breeze closing to it. It's not the full, like, build up to a peak, white lights, and then it's over. It kind of works the way that Billy Breeze does. Disease, to your point, Jonathan, I just wrote down Bright and Soaring Type 1 version. There's just nothing
Yeah.
that really
Mhm.
stands out. It's
Yeah.
good,
Great
but like
peak.
doesn't blow me away. Train Song, Horse Silent. The mid-90s ballads hit a little different. There's just a
I
little
know.
difference with hearing these songs at this point in time than it is hearing a ballad now. And then Antelope, I probably had the most notes about this song. I wrote an extremely fire first set has to close with an extremely fire song. Antelope in the mid 1990s is as aggressive and loud and fire as it gets. Tight, aggressive, jammy arena rock. Hyperkinetic riffage. You hear arena rock, December 95 type of sound creeping back in. It's what we were talking about as we were introducing this show. The sense of this band is still in 95 in some cases, but hinting towards
Mhm.
97. And I just wrote down that they were trying to rid themselves of this band. And I remember one thing I remember from reading about this period. I was going to go back and read aspects of the Fish book, but I just didn't have time this week. But Trey talks about how during this period in time, rather than play the predicted solo, he would hide behind his amplifier and let Mike and Paige be the two musicians out front playing music. And it was just a couple moments throughout the tour that he does that. And I was thinking about, like, a year from now, Antelope is going to have moments where it's going to drop into a funk start stop groove, and it's going to completely deter and like move away from where Antelope is like supposed to go, how the song was written. And you just hear this band now not knowing any other way to play Antelope than as loud and aggressive and in
Yeah.
your face as possible. And it works, but you also can hear that this band is like, okay, we're trying to move away from this at this point in time. So it's just really fascinating push and pull of who they were. Any final thoughts here on set one before we move into a set two that I have like paragraphs of notes on?
I'm so excited to talk about this tweezer. Let's go. Let's go.
All right.
Get in there.
Set two.
Yeah.
Just listen to this set list as it unfolds. So we've got Tweezer into Sparkle, into Simple, direct segue into A Day in the Life, Reba, Swept Away, Steep, into Tweezer Reprise, into Johnny Be Good, into Slave to the Traffic Light, and an encore of Highway to Hell. And you would be excused if you thought that every one of those songs had an exclamation point after it, because holy shit. I think that we can dive deep into a couple of these songs here. So let's just really quickly, what are your thoughts on this set as it works overall?
I mean, I think it works. I think it works overall. I would take one song out, and we'll get to that in a minute. But it's I think that I'm into it.
Meg, how about you?
Yeah. It's a monster set. And I think that it doesn't follow any of the kind of like tropes, like Tweezer Reprise should be at the very end, or you know what I mean? Or like Tweezer Reprise then Slave, but instead they put like Johnny Be Good in there. And they've got like, you know, Day in the Life doesn't usually come after Simple. Like there's just all these things that don't really make sense, but it works so well. And there are just some epic versions of these songs. And I love, this is like the best of 1996 because it's like all these different parts that shouldn't really go together, but it works. And I'm so excited to talk about this tweezer. You know, I don't think I've listened back to this tweezer. Like, I don't know if I ever have since I was there. And I can't believe that I don't remember being in the room for this. Like, that is like just unbelievable. I didn't even remember. I found out my show count was wrong, which I think it might be in other ways too, but because I didn't even know I was at the show the night before the show. Like I've kept all my ticket stubs and I didn't have that night. And my friend was like, you were there. We were all riding together. And I was like, oh my God, I didn't know. So the fact that I wasn't in the room, I don't remember being in the room for this is just like, makes me want to go back and like slap myself, be like, what are you doing? You're seeing Phish in the mid 90s. Like remember every moment of this. I do remember a lot, but I don't remember this, but I'm really excited to talk about it. It was so fun to listen back to.
Yeah, I think just from a structural standpoint, I don't know of many shows that are better mirrors of each other between set one and set two. This to me is the set two version of set one, where it's a lot of random songs thrown in that just work in a really, really cool way. And the flow is really good. And like you said, like Johnny Be Good being thrown in between Tweezer Reprise and Slave to the Traffic Light. Like on the one hand,
doesn't make sense.
Unnecessary. You don't need to do that. On the other hand, do it. It's fucking awesome. It works so well.
Don't do it.
Don't do it.
Bro, that honestly,
is
Johnny
that
Be
your
Good. That's the one. Johnny Be Good, totally fine and okay when they randomly landed in summer of '95. You know, it feels like it comes out of nowhere. I think this song is just Phish doesn't need to play this song because they have Tweezer Reprise, because they have this tweezer, because they have everything else going on in this show and other shows. I feel like, and there's, you know, it disappeared from their repertoire for a reason. I think they knew it too. It's
I don't love it either. I don't mind it here, but I don't love it. It's like when the Dead play One More Saturday Night. I'm like, no.
Mute your microphone.
We've uncovered some serious tension here. No, Johnny Be Good, you're right. Like, and I noted this, you know, just before we get to it. The last time it was played was 7/8/98, so it has not been played in 25 years at this point in time.
That's crazy. Yeah.
Debuts 6/17/95. Between that and 7/8/98, the biggest gap was 58 shows, 7/3 all the way to 12/31/95. So it was just not played across the fall tour until the end of the year, kind of as like a throwback to a couple big moments of the summer tour. And then it's played sporadically in 96, 97, has a great jam version on 11/17/97, and then 98 and no more. And I think that they probably realized we're just not a blues band and we shouldn't, we're not a blues rock
Thank
band.
God.
Although my soul My soul
Yeah.
is always
Well, except
fucking
with
playing.
that, I mean, that's the thing is they have My Soul. They can do everything with that song.
Everything, literally everything. So
Covers all ground.
let's dive into this tweezer.
Literally.
I have a lot
Just
of
saying,
notes.
we need a 90-minute, not My Soul, is really what I'm saying.
Yeah, just like
One set, one song, one set.
No,
just
no,
over
thank
and
you.
over
Just
and over and over
do it at
again,
sound check
just to
if you
see
have
if
to
they
do
can
it.
do it for 90 minutes without any change. Set 2 begins with tweezer. Before like let's get into the weeds here. This is a really interesting tweezer.
I'm into
To
weeds.
me, the closest comp I have for it is the 112796 Downs Z's from Seattle, Washington, which sounds to me, both of these jams sound like Baby 97. It sounds like a
Yeah.
band that is trying to figure out how to get to that point and what do they need to do while still falling back on certain things that work. And those things that work really well, but they do feel in some cases in tension with the direction that they're trying to go. You can hear it from the start. There's a slow funk intro. They're kind of pushing themselves into this groove zone right out of their lyrics. Mike immediately appears apparent. He appears louder. You get these sonar effects from Trey. They quiet things down. Page, though, is still lingering on the grand piano. He's not playing any clav in any sort of way, which would be a signature sound a year from now. And Trey, throughout it, is kind of fighting this urge to lead, which is just fascinating to hear. What are your guys' thoughts on this tweezer, and kind of where do you think this says about where the band is at the time?
So it's funny you highlight the bit with Trey fighting the urge to lead, but one of my favorite parts is where he's not, and he's like singing along with his leads, and it's not just like little notes. He's singing these riffs as he plays them, and it's
Yeah.
Very like
intense.
Zeppelin-esque at that point.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
so good and heavy. Love that bit, but also I do love the bit where he moves to the MIDI kit and then Page just takes over. The thing that he was trying to do for a year at this point is just like it's totally working. Page moves right on front, and I really like that. I think this is a really good tweezer, and the fact that it lands in Sparkle makes it even better.
Yes.
Sorry, Ryan's not here. I'm just mostly just saying that for him.
Yeah. I would love to hear this as an archival release because I think there's a lot you can't like really hear as well as I want to hear, but you can just hear in the beginning that they're just in the pocket. They're like doing the, they're really like feeling it right away. And they're building those drops like so well. And Trey's tone is so bluesy and you can start to hear that funk coming in. And there's still like a driving sense to it because it's a tweezer jam, but it starts to feel like really stretchy. And it sounds like the jam sort of like breaks out and has like this life of its own. And then it gets kind of like scary and freewheeling when Trey gets on the mini kit and weird and mechanical. And I love the like rock that comes out of that. It's like this driving heavy metal and
Yep.
Fishman's like, hooah. And it reminded me of, speaking of Terminator again, it reminded me of that scene when like the robots take over and they're like driving over the like human skulls when they've like taken over Earth. Yeah. And it's like this slowed down, like evil machine sounding. And they're all like screaming and yelling. This tweezer's so good. It's so good.
Slowed down evil machine sounding should be on the hype sticker for this release when they put it out on vinyl or a CD for everybody.
Yeah,
Meg,
I
have
kept
you-
imagining that.
Have you seen Terminator 2 yet?
No, I haven't watched it yet.
Oh my
Well,
God.
you need to watch it before we get to
Okay.
97, 98, and 99 because a
Okay.
man literally turns to liquid and can go through buildings and walls. And that is basically what Fish does over the next 4 years of their career.
Okay, I'm watching
Plus
that.
good
this
Guns N' Roses
weekend.
content.
Great Guns N' Roses
Really?
content.
Oh, I was super
oh,
into
yeah.
them back then too. Okay.
Maybe, top 5 sequel of all time. It's amazing.
So good. But we
and
digress.
Linda Hamilton, so hot. Okay, keep going.
Just wait.
So
Just
hot.
wait. Yeah, yes, very, but yes, wow. One thing I was noticing, like you talk about that crazy industrial rock peak, like 7 months later, this is not a rock peak anymore. This is all groove. And this is the band is moving away from this peak. And it's just fascinating to hear that push and pull. The other thought I had about this jam is there's the slow down tweezer ending, like on A Picture of Nectar, but it's very lengthy. You expect it to be like
Yep.
the slow down ending, and then they move into something. But then you check the timestamp and you're at like 18 minutes and you still have like 2.5, 3
Yeah.
minutes to go. You get those like breaks, like the
So
like the
good.
howls, and it's just this like fusion of boundary pushing music and humor that, like, we talked about this last week when we were recapping spring. Like Jonathan mentioned how important humor is, and when it's missing, it's something that's
Mm.
noticeable. This is an era where there's not a lot of humor missing. They are still able to tap into this on a night to night basis
Yes.
while jamming. Goes into sparkle, as you noted. My note for this was just, when the energy is this high, go all in on senseless bluegrass. And I also noticed that like the first verse of this song is very quiet. And if you go back and listen
Yes.
to it, it's like purposefully,
Totally.
like Trey's
It's
just
like
like muting the guitar and he's singing
yes.
the lyrics. And then when they go into the actual chorus, it like builds. It's just a really
I know.
interesting use of dynamics.
It
Love it.
sounds like almost like demented and glazed. It's less like
Mm.
bubbly. You know, like other versions like Sparkle, it's just like bubbly right away. And I was saying it feels like the robots have like mind fucked them, because it's like the beginning is like really like, yeah, it's just
Well,
it's like lingering and they're laughing. And there's like even the laugh part is like a little off kilter. It's like
well, that's
really trippy.
what this show is doing very well is
Yeah.
its
Mhm.
tone. It's not just
Yeah.
like, oh, we laid out these songs so they'll be good together, but they maintain this tone throughout. So, we get that, and then we get Simple, which as a song is, you might as well laugh at it, but has a really, but it takes from that point, it goes into a really nice kind of blissy meltdown jam
Yeah.
that is
Yeah,
the thing
delicate.
that Simple could do well at this time, especially when it wasn't after Mike's song. And I really enjoy it.
It's
I
perfect
just
placement.
love, I just have to pause. I love that you've been on this podcast for 8 years now. I've been in communication with you for probably about by that time. We saw our first show together in 2015, and I had no idea you felt this way about Simple. Of all songs, I had no idea you felt this way about
It's
Simple. It's
trash.
pretty amazing. It's amazing. Yeah, you get a calypso kind of
So
breezy
good.
jam here.
Mhm.
Second drum kit. Mike Page moved kind of on beat music. Trey is moving against the solo, and then it goes into A Day in the Life, which is both bizarre and amazing placement. Pretty straightforward version of the song, just the placement of it is really, really cool. And then it fades into, and my notes on this are for Reba. What? Here? Now? Amazing.
Yes, here now.
Yes,
Amazing.
and it's
Reba.
Like,
beautiful. It's so pretty. There's like this sweet, playful space to it. It's beautiful, really vibey, great peak. Like it's beautiful Reba. Perfect.
well, it
Yeah.
starts in, go ahead.
Well, I was going to just cite the fish.net note on it because they,
Mm.
they talk about the groove and how it's remarkable. They say, Trey soon breaks to solo atop a passage of really cool and stately calm, hushed and unhurried. Mike and Page offer wonderful accents as the band continues to probe and explore, expertly modulating intensity. Trey soon breaks free, his solo extended and infused with amplified energy. Sometimes these notes on the jam chart items are kind of throwaway, a little bit of detail, and sometimes they're poetry. And that is a really nice one. And I just want to call that out. Also, pretty accurate.
Yeah.
Very accurate, because when they go into the Reba jam, Trey is not playing notes, he's just strumming chords, and it's very
Mhm.
Right.
rhythmic. Again, this kind of push towards what we're going to hear in 97, but it builds towards this very satisfying, gorgeous peak. I feel like 96, one of the things that attracted me to 96 originally when I started listening more to the shows was it's kind of the last time that songs like Bowie, Yem, Reba can anchor a second set in the way that they could between 1990 and 1995. Whereas once you get into 97, they are, when you remove some of these songs from the rotation, they're going to infuse other songs that sound vastly different from what Fish sounded like beforehand. And moving into later stages of their career, you're going to hear a song like Reba move more towards the first set and really kind of stay in the first set outside of a few very, distinct examples. This is kind of that last time that Reba can be played in the middle of the second set, and it is treated the same way that Everything's Right will be treated 20 years later, where you hear a
Mm.
band, there's not a reference to two songs, there's a reference to one song, but 20 years later, that, this is a band that is still resting on these classic songs. And this Reba
Mhm.
really, really benefits from the placement and from the fact that they still have 25 minutes left in the set. And so they're going to give as much as they can to this before concluding it.
Yeah, and then Swept Away Steep. I mean, I wish they used this as a landing spot after big jams more often. Like, this is so beautiful. I heard this 3 times in 96 and then again at the Baker's Dozen, that like jammed out version on Maple Night. Oh
oh.
my God.
So
I
good.
love this bit of music so much. I really wish it was played more often, and it's perfectly placed here.
I mean, they just
30
really just need to play it like one more time when I'm in the building, please.
Yes.
33 times total.
Is
all
that
time.
it? Are you
33.
serious?
I
Yeah,
went
that's
back
why
and
I've
looked
never
at
seen
Let
it.
me see how many times I've seen it. You've never seen it?
That-
No,
And Swept Away Steep
They're
was
mean.
played 22 times
4.
in 1996, 1997, and since then only 11 times. The last time played
Wow.
August 28th, 2021 from the Gorge, second night of a
Yes.
3-night run at the Gorge. Really, really good Gorge show. I would kill for this more. I agree with you. I think I've only seen this once at SPAC 2010, and it was when they started to reintroduce the second written jam segment of Steep that kind of builds
Mm.
the latter part of that song, which would ultimately peak on Maple Night as one of the best jams of the entire Baker's Dozen and one of the most stunning moments. So you get this kind of works. This is the only real cool down that we get in the second
Mhm.
set. This is our ballad is like 90 seconds. It's kind of crazy. And if you think about the first set, all we got was Train Song, Horse, Silence. So like we've really had like a collective 10 minutes of the entire show being quiet, contemplative, pretty. The rest of it has been very loud, aggressive, in our face, pretty at times, but like
Simple has a pretty low key kind of melt in its jam. That's kind of
this was all just a ploy to get
very
you to say
chill.
something nice about Simple. So thank you.
I already said
Perfectly.
that. I'm just repeating myself
Nailed it.
here.
So this
Reba
then
gets the best
fades.
song, too.
This then fades into Tweezer Reprise, which I just wrote brilliant fucking placement, throwing everyone off, which then goes into
Yeah.
Johnny Be Good, which we talked about. I'll just say one last thought here about Johnny Be Good is so many moments in this show display the transition between 95 and 97 Fish. And this call just screams it to me. There's still the band leaning into energy and big song calls when 5 months later, none of that will matter to them. 5 months later, they're going to play, and I keep referring to like that Amsterdam set from February, the Amsterdam sets from the summer, the weird set list choices throughout summer 1997 on the US side, whereas they go into a song like Johnny Be Good here because it's a classic rock song. Everyone knows it's going to up the energy from the Tweezer Reprise. That's just not something they're even going to consider over the next couple of years, basically. And it's a very wild shift that they're undergoing. And then we end the set with Slave to the Traffic Light because we're in Los Angeles and it's going to be very hard for everyone to get back home. Crowd
who
rejoices.
knows how I got back home? Who knows?
You have no memory.
I don't even know
of
where
it,
I went. I don't even know where
which
I
is
slept.
crazy. You could still be in the Poly Pavilion right now and
I
just
have no
living this
memory of what the
Matrix life
Polypavilion
existence.
It looks like. I know. It's so weird.
She
Jonathan, what-
dissociated early in the Simple because her
Well-
mind needed to go somewhere else, and she
Well-
just everything for the past 27 years is still it's not real.
It's the
And in
longest
another
Simple
couple
ever.
minutes, it'll be a day in the life.
No, Neil said that it was probably Jägermeister and oatmeal stout. I think it may be a combination of that and maybe the stuffing that Jonathan mentioned. So yeah, it's a lot of things
good
happening in
stuffing.
1996. Yeah, a lot.
It's very good stuffing. That's really good. Jonathan, what were your thoughts on kind of the cap of this overall show?
I mean, Slave is a great way to end most shows. I think pretty solid way to end this one. And Highway to Hell is awesome. And
Yes, so fun.
they haven't played this in since 2009?
8/16/09.
And
wow, that needs to.
and
come
I don't
back.
know if Trey feels like it conflicts with some of his other material, but they could fucking play this song again. It would be rad. What a great, fun way to end a show. swap it out for where they might be thinking good times, bad times, just every now and then. It's such a good, like,
It's
let's
a
toss up one
capstone,
more rock song
exclamation
and get us
point.
out of here kind
Yeah,
of song.
yeah.
Yeah,
It's
and
a fun
because of the bust
song.
out factor, it would shock some
People would be
fans.
crazy.
Amazing.
It is interesting. I was noting as I was listening back to this show and I was taking notes. The encore for 10/21/95, the last 40 for 40 show we did, was also Highway to Hell. So
Oh,
a little bit
yeah,
of
yeah.
just a bit of a nod to a past era. This is that bridge is being formed. So it's a good ending to it, and it's notable that they just packed the second set with so much music that they could only come out and play a 3-minute rock song. That's a good sign
Mhm.
sometimes with Phish. So, any last thoughts that you guys have about this show after we've dived so deep into it? Any thoughts about kind of where this sets the band up as we're moving into 1997 next week?
Seems to me that it's all over. They were out of ideas and probably going to break up for 30, 20 some years. Yeah, that was
And
about
then
to
come
happen.
back and play an amazing
That's why.
spring tour.
That's.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just without looking at what might have happened after this show. This was probably the end of the band, right?
This is it. This is the end
Yeah, they
of
were done,
something.
clearly.
Meg, what are your thoughts?
I don't know.
Well, I just really appreciate getting to think about this year so much and diving into this. It's just been so fun for me, and just trying to remember this year. And it was such an important year for me in my Phish career. And I love thinking about where the band was this year. And I think it's amazing that they're going to take this energy they got from Halloween and this great end of fall tour and kind of I mean, they had a really crazy New Year's Eve run. I was there too, and it was really insane. I mean, they played like 16 Candles, Champagne Supernova, like really weird stuff. But then the Bohemian Rhapsody, which I had like a very intense experience during, which I can tell you about another time. But those shows are kind of weird. And then they're going to come back and like go to Europe and just break open this whole new thing. And I just think it's such an exciting thing to think about this band that could play anything, didn't know maybe what to play or how to play it, and then found their way out of that into this, what I think and is my favorite year of Phish. So I'm fucking pumped about next week too.
Yeah, no, I actually have a serious comment,
Please.
which is to state that I really enjoyed this more than I kind of think I'm
Yes.
going to when I go to a 1996 show. Other than Clifford Ball, I have also a lot of like happy connection and memory of listening to the Joyous Lake show, just because I remember
Mhm.
getting it in the excitement of the moment when that happened. And they just played a little tiny club, and oh my God, new
So
material while they're
cool.
making an album and whatever, all that nonsense. And I'm still really connected to that, I think. But this is, this is a good show. And I agree completely that they should look into releasing this as another
Yeah.
good example of material from this era that we need like proper recordings or soundboard recordings to supplement the audience recordings.
Yeah, sharing a lot of thoughts that you guys have. I think the only thing I'd add is, we're about to enter what I think is the most fascinating period in the band's history, and it's a period where a lot of things are going to come to a head. All of the work, all of the practice that they have put in over the last 15 years to this point in time, 14 years to this point in time, is suddenly going to result in
They're just going to fritter it away and just end in 2-chord vamps.
Yeah, I mean, some people would say that. I mean, I think it's going to be a release period of sorts where they've worked and there's been so much tension and so much focus, and they're going to find that by taking their foot off the gas a little bit, they're going to find a new source of magic and a new source of inspiration, but also the challenge and issues of fame and fortune and
Mhm.
party and outside influences, chemically induced, that have been beneficial on the outside at least, are going to start to show themselves in a darker way. And you think about these guys in 1996, I believe that Trey is 32 years old at this point in time, but he's been doing this since he was 18, and all these guys are right around that kind of early 30s period in their lives. their whole 30s are going to be filled with a lot of challenge and also a lot of beauty. I mean, these guys are all going to become dads, and they're going to find success in a way that, you ever tell your parents you have a dream and they're like, okay, cool, have a backup plan. Like, these guys didn't have a backup plan, and they found as much success as anyone could have ever imagined, and then some. And then it's going to turn into a lot of darkness. And so for me, I'm
Mhm.
really, really excited as we look ahead over the next 4 or 5 episodes of this to just discuss kind of what all that means for this band.
Yeah.
Because a lot of where we are today, when we talk about Phish today, is a result of what is going to happen over the next couple of years. And so I'm just fascinated. I loved this show. I encourage anyone out there who hasn't heard it, go and listen to this show. But it's fascinating to think about where we're about to go.
I thought Trey's backup plan was hockey, wasn't it?
That might have been, yeah, he was a pretty good hockey player. Yeah, that's a good call. Your number one dream is rock and roll star. Your number 2 dream is to play in the NHL. Your number 3 dream is to be, just like a mid-level manager at a tech company in middle of New Jersey, but it
That
could have worked out
stings a
in
little.
different ways. I feel it. I feel it. I feel it.
Yeah, just like my dream was to be a 3rd grade teacher. It's all good. It's all good.
We're all living it out here vicariously through
Yeah,
Phish every Friday
exactly.
afternoon, which is a great conclusion here. We will be back next Friday to discuss a TBD 1996 show. And I say TBD because RJ is the one picking it, which means we will get the show on Wednesday evening. So
If we're
thank you.
lucky.
If we're lucky. But, we've all heard every 97 show. We can all talk about that
It's
without
true.
even listening. Thank you all for hanging out with us here. Thank you, everyone in the chat. We love you all. We need to figure out a way to get a Almost Always There live show every Friday before us so that we can inherit
I know.
your audience, because you're all fucking awesome. But thank you to everyone who did hang out with us here. Thank you, Glenn, for hanging
Thanks,
here.
Glenn.
Steely, Tom.
Thanks, Tom.
We're all just living the dream. That's exactly
Yeah.
exactly what it is. Thank you, Came to Play. Thank you, Neil. And I have to note really quickly, because I meant to say this at the time. Heather Deacon took note of us saying we couldn't do 2 Nebraska shows in a row, that it was a rule. We were totally joking. I am the biggest Nebraska defender out here as the person who drives across it multiple times a year. Beautiful state. Absolutely love it. So thank you,
Thanks,
guys.
Heather.
And we've
That's
got one last
Heathen.
one here.
Not Heather.
Yes, Jordan.
Heathen, excuse me, Heathen.
Oh, Heathen,
Jordan,
sorry.
that we got a 3rd grade teacher that rages her face off to jam bands in the regular. That is you, Meg. You are killing it. Amazing
Thanks,
stuff.
guys. Thanks, Jordan.
Thank you all. Have a great weekend. Listen to more Fall 96 Phish, and we will see you right back here, same place, same time, to discuss something 1997. Does it even matter what show we're discussing? It doesn't.
Nope, because it's the best year of Phish. We'll be back.
There it is. I'll let you go out on that without any sort of rebuttal. See y'all. Have a great weekend.
Bye, guys.
Talk
Bye, y'all.
soon.